It felt really cool. It felt really, really cool. It felt like a magical moment where I got to take this thing that I'd written a couple years back and kind of just existed on the screen and bring it to life. I've also never really been able to see the audience for it and have them reacting in real time to the jokes that I wrote, because I pretty much just wrote it on my own, sent it over to Meanjin. They were, so great to publish it, and then I maybe sent it around to a couple of friends. So seeing it in this new context and seeing it with an audience and having them laugh along and enjoy the story has been really wonderful. I am eternally obsessed with women. I love women. I try to write them as much as I can in my stories. Atu for me is a mixture of various aunties and cousins and other maternal figures in my life. So for me, it is a figure that has always existed in some sense around me growing up and now, and I hope forever. So writing her was quite enjoyable, but it was also quite an easy task because I just kind of drew from different aunties that I have and kind of mixed them together into this character, imagining, because she is entirely fictional, imagining what her kitchen would look like, what her house would look like, the way that she would interact with my character and that sort of thing. But she exists as a mix of various women that I've encountered, various Assyrian women that I've encountered in my life. And for me, it is just that sort of fundamental maternal figure that I have found so valuable as part of my experience, but also kind of a core Assyrian experience, because strong Assyrian women are so vital to the survival of the community and the continuation of culture. There's a feeling that sometimes literature has to be quite timeless, or be quite intellectual. So I love the idea of playing with language that can exist in a literary context, but have these concepts that feel a lot more relatable and a lot more timely. I think that pop culture is an essential part of the lived human experience, because it gives us a sense of what people are excited about, what people are engaging with, particularly as a teenager who is influencing that so heavily. I mean, we're often looking at young people and being like, what are you listening to? What are you wearing? What are you doing? And so being able to give that a space in a context that it might not always have, and be able to see that it is valuable, that it gives us a direct line to who that character is, where they exist in time, what their interests are. That is always something that's really fascinating to me. Like if I say NSYNC, that gives you a particular space in time and a particular kind of character. If I say One Direction, that's something completely different. And so I feel like it gives us a real snapshot of that particular phase. I also enjoy other characters that do engage in popular culture and don't shy away from it. So I feel like they have kind of empowered me to do the same in my work. I don't think I aspire for funny necessarily. I'm eternally fascinated between how a person presents themselves and how a person actually is. And that difference, the embarrassment, the shame, the fear that exists in that middle space is so fun for me. So I spent a lot of time as a child observing adults and noticing that difference, and I continue to do so. So for me, when I'm writing those moments, I'm thinking about how this person wants to be seen and how they want to be perceived externally, and then who they actually are. And that gap where they're compensating is that awkwardness for me, or is that humor for me. So like if you want to look really hot but your thighs are sweaty, that's where the humor exists for me. If you just got your hair blown out but the lady gelled it and it's sticking to the back of your scalp, like that is where the humor exists for me. It's in those moments where who you want to be and who you actually are don't come into contact the way that you want. And I think that the bits of us that we hide, the bits of us that we're ashamed of or embarrassed about. So yeah, noticing that gap is where I kind of find the humor or find the awkwardness. I think it was, we don't get to see Assyrian men or men from West Asia or North Africa in contexts where they get to be gentle or they get to be romantic. So I was kind of interested in that, of like, what does this man actually look like? What does this sort of gentle Assyrian man look like? Because even though his friends are like real homebrewers, he's quite respectful and he's quite gentle and charismatic. And so it was interesting to paint that kind of portrait of a man from Iraq or a man like an Assyrian man. So that was something that was interesting to me. But I think I'm also interested in what romance or sexuality looks like from the female perspective. I was actually thinking about this today of like, what does it look like when women write sexuality, or what does it look like when women write bodies or when women write romance? And I think it brings to it a different kind of thing, because not every person has the same experience, but my focus is a lot more on the connection and the kind of awkwardness in the way that bodies exist, as opposed to just strictly sexualizing them. So that was kind of what I was interested in writing. But I never go forward with my writing having a particular image in mind. I kind of just write moments that are interesting to me, and then eventually the collection of these moments start to make a story, and I just try to fill the bits in between them. So as soon as I had Atu, I was like, oh my God, what if she has a really hot son? And then there's that sort of that friction between wanting to impress this elder with what a good girl you are and what a nice girl you are, and sort of fighting with your attraction to her son, or fighting with your sexuality, or whatever that might be. This is a tricky one, because I don't think I have like a specific response or something that's well thought out. I think I'm just fascinated by the human body and thinking of it outside of the context of like a digital space or a marketing or commercial space, to think about how bodies can be soft or awkward or wet or slimy or sticky or hairy or whatever that is, and kind of giving space to that. I've always been fascinated, because I didn't grow up in the West and I didn't grow up in Australia. I actually came here when I was 7. There is a thing about Western culture or white culture where there is kind of a fear of the body and this desire to present the body as anything but animalistic, and sort of wanting to sit a particular way and speak a particular way and even go to the bathroom in a particular way, because there's such a fear of just being yourself or kind of relaxing into yourself. So I'm kind of fascinated of like, what is the body like when we're not binding it or trying to present it in a particular way or trying to sanitize it? What does it look like when a body isn't being forced to be attractive or engaging? And so I just notice these things about people. Like, I'll notice people's freckles. I'll notice if like one ear is slightly bigger than the other. I'll notice if they have wrinkles, if they have spider veins and that sort of thing. And none of these things are attractive or unattractive to me. They're just parts of the body, the same way that you'd notice like, I don't know, spots on a table or stains, or maybe the wood has a particular grain to it, or maybe the varnish has a particular sheen. Like, I feel like with human bodies it's the same sort of thing, where you're just noticing things about it. And I think that it's interesting to see it beyond the scope of just trying to be aesthetic. I think the short stories are great because they're very accessible as a writer. You don't need a lot of resources to be able to put them together. I mean, something like a novel, something like a theatre show requires a lot of resources. So there is an immediacy that you can work with in terms of wherever you are in your life and whatever resources you have at your disposal. Here's this form that's incredibly accessible, and we see them done in all sorts of genres and for all sorts of mediums, and then published across all sorts of platforms. And so it means that you don't have to wait to do that. It's not like a novel where you're, building up to those credentials or you're building up to those resources. And so I think the timeliness and the accessibility of it means that you can lock right into a story or lock right into a character that's interesting to you. And that ability to get right into things allows you to maintain a lot of the interest or the energy that you have that maybe doesn't sustain itself the same way when it's like a longer term project or something that you're trying to build towards across multiple years. So I think that's the wonderful thing about short stories. You're looking at the magic of words in a very short space of time across a very limited page or a very limited online platform. This has been a really, really wonderful experience. I've loved getting to know the team, and I've also loved getting to know the other performers and writers. I think that opportunities like this are very unique, and I hope to see that this is continually funded. I'm very curious to see the rest of it grow and see more of our stories have a life beyond the publications or beyond the online platforms that they sit in. I think it's a really great way to invigorate or make more lively the literary space, because oftentimes people are reading independently, they're reading on their own, which is a wonderful thing to be able to sit on one's own and read. But having it in such a live space and give it another life and seeing how other people's perspectives or engagement with it has been really, really wonderful. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the future for Story Saloon looks like. I hope it gets all the funding that it deserves. And I'm very curious to see the other writers and performers that get up on stage and get to share their work and seeing it in this very new and lively context at the Vanguard.